Come get your fresh mushrooms! Did you guys bring cash?
Well, I'd like some mushrooms.
They're not free. He looks like a chef. We've got a stash over there. Huh? Shit. Uh-oh.
I think you guys will find this little fella's been eating all your mushrooms.
Can you still pay us? No, this was empty when I got here.
Don't you lie to me, you little shit.
PFTEK!
Cooking with Russ. This is the easiest way to grow mushrooms, dead set. It's so simple.
Absolute easy mode.
Absolute easy mode. Are we ready? We're recording? All right. Oh, no. Let's just start again. And we're back. It's Cooking with Russ again. Today we're doing the PFTEK. I learned this method from, was it Roger Rabbit and Mark O'Keefe on the Let's Grow Mushrooms DVD. It's the best way to start growing mushrooms. You're only playing with small amounts of materials, so when you stuff up, which you all do, bin the contents, sterilise it and go again. Let's go. What we're going to need for this, wide mouth, half pint jars with our Aussie Mason brand here. We're doing 6 jars, so we've got 750 mils of vermiculite, 300 mils brown rice flour, and then 220 mils of water. This should give us about 6 jars, maybe some leftovers, but it should be right. So we start off with the 750 mils of vermiculite and 220 mils of water. Pour a little bit in, give it a mix. A bit more. Just so you got an even mix. Add a bit, mix it. Add a bit more. Mix it. Get all the bits out of the corner. Alright, that's all the water in there. There are many different ratios out there, but I found this worked best for me many years ago. So once the vermiculite's soaked up all the water, and we'll add just a little bit of brown rice flour. Mix it through. A bit more. Mix it through. This is how you get an even mix. And you'll find all the wet vermiculite will make all the brown rice flour stick to it. So all the bits of vermiculite will have a nice coating of brown rice flour on the outside. All right, that's all pretty evenly mixed. Compressor, such a selfish compressor. We can wait. So back to the jars. So now that that's all nicely evenly mixed, you want to prepare your lids. Generally you prepare them before you start. You want 4 holes in your lid. This is to later on inject your culture through. Plus it also allows for air exchange while they're growing. So what we do is a couple of scoops. What I generally do is fill it up to probably just above the bottom thread. Wipe the rim so there's no bits of wet material left behind. Give it a tap on the bench so it settles. And the most important bit is making sure the rim's nice and clean, whether it's a tea towel or cloth or whatever. I find clean finger, run around, that's enough. And I'll leave that to the side. I'll get all these filled up. The main reason of leaving a gap above is we fill this with dry vermiculite. So do all these jars, good, make sure the rim's nice and clean, good tap so it settles. Make our way through them. So this sort of compacts it a little bit, but not too much. So what we've done, we filled up to just below that bottom thread, gave it a tap down to settle it, wipe the rim clean of any bits of the mixture, just to make sure there's no wet material that anything can make their way down into your jar and grow. So what we're going to do is fill this top layer with dry vermiculite. This acts as a filter, so if anything sort of lands in the holes, there's a dry layer where it's not going to germinate and grow, so it protects nice yummy substrate with things landing on it. I've got a big tub of vermiculite here just to fill it up. So it's nice and full. Put the lid over and do it up. All right, our 6 jars are full of our yummy mushroom mixture. Next step, need some foil to cover the jars. Go around tightly. Make sure it's nice and tight over the lid. This will help stop any water or any steam pooling up and getting into your dry vermiculite layer. So make it nice and tight, just to help keep any excess water getting back in there. Prepared these earlier. Standard tin foil, fold in half. Perfect size for covering a mason jar. This also helps protect it when you get it out of the cooker, because it stops things landing in your holes and potentially getting into your nice sterilised jar. And that's it. They're ready to go. There's 2 ways you can sterilise your PFTEK jars. There is steaming, or you can do it in a pressure cooker. We're going to do it in our steriliser, which will be an hour at 15 psi to 16 psi. Or the other way is steaming. You just need a big pot and enough water in the bottom that you can create constant steam and steam them for an hour and a half. Steaming your jars, you're only pasteurising them, so it doesn't kill everything. So you need to keep your jars below 18 degrees. If they get too warm, or your bacteria and things that you didn't kill will wake up and then your jars will go bad. So if you're only steaming, make sure you incubate at low temperatures. When you're sterilising, they can get a bit warmer and it's a lot more forgiving. So a pressure cooker is the best way to have guaranteed sterilised jars. Well, let's load them in our steriliser. This is our All-American 50X steriliser. These are super handy because you can have it near your float hood or whatever. We just load them in. Now that our jars are in, we've got it turned on to warm up. We're going to tighten the lid up. The most important thing with the All-American sterilisers or canners is that the lid is flat when you're screwing it down. So only finger tight, or just so it's resting. Look from the side, make sure it's even front to back, and go to the next 2. Make sure it's even, only just touching. Once they're all just touching, and then it's a matter of just half a turn at a time, just to make sure it comes down evenly. If you haven't done it flat, you'll see it leaks from the edge, so you have to loosen it off, re-straighten, go down again. We'll let this warm up. The most important thing with sterilising with a pressure canner is letting it vent until all the oxygen or cold air is exhausted out of it. That can take about 15 to 20 minutes once it starts steaming at the top, so make sure you're patient and wait for it to steam for at least 15 to 20 minutes before closing and bring up your temperature. PFTEK jars we cook for 1 hour at 15 psi and then just let it slowly cool. Generally people leave them in there overnight and then bring them out to inoculate them the next day. We'll check back in shortly. Hey Siri, set time for 30 minutes.
30 minutes counting down.
Later.
I'm as ready as I'll ever be. So, it's been warming up for about 45 minutes, our 6 jars. It's starting to steam. Let me just... So we're gonna let this hiss away for a good 15 to 20 minutes because we want all the oxygen to be purged out of the jars and the unit, and that way it will all heat up fairly evenly when it is shut. Well, let's check back in about 15 minutes. We're back, and it's time to close. So it'll be about 15 minutes to heat up, and then we're going to start our timing from when it gets to 15 psi, and we're going to cook them for an hour, and then just turn the heat off and then let it cool down naturally overnight, and then we'll be back to inject them tomorrow. Hey, there's a smudge on the lid. There we go. There was a big curly whirly hair on there. Ooh.
Tomorrow.
Who can say where the road goes, where the day flows?
When you realise you've been growing mushrooms for 18 years. Man, it's cold in Melbourne today. There's cameras everywhere. Oh God. Ah! Yeah. I'm sure Pat will embarrass me again. Like, it's fine. Yeah. It's just another day in monthly mushroom supplies. Every good mushroom farm runs on coffee. Well, the poor bastard that decided to start one. So today, we're going to inject the jars we cooked yesterday with some white oyster. One of our most popular mushrooms. And we're back. And I'm in my ghetto outfit because you can do this shit at home. We made our PFTEK jars yesterday. We cooked them for 1 hour at 15 PSI. We let them cool overnight. Now we're going to unload them and inoculate them with a liquid culture syringe. Because it's been sitting here in the open overnight, give it a bit of a spray. In case anything landed on it. The cleaner you keep things, the more success you're going to have. We're just working on a bench today because PFTEK jars you don't need a floated for. I did that way too tight, which is fine. This is why I didn't leak. Sometimes they vacuum down, so you need a bit of a jimmy. Here we have our nicely cooked PFTEK jars. It's nice and sort of light colour, it's not dark and burnt or anything like that, so we didn't annihilate it cooking it too hard. Perfect. Now that we've unloaded it, let's inoculate them. We want to give you a bam with this spice weasel. Bam! Bam! We're ready to inoculate. I'm going to do this with no gloves on, just on an open table, just to show that you can do this at home. Things you're going to need. You made PFTEK jars, a lighter, obviously a pair of scissors, some isopropyl, and I've got an agar plate, so we can do an agar test after we inoculate our jars, then we can see that the syringe is clean. This is a good practice to do if you're buying syringes from vendors online, because there's lots of backyard people that sell things they don't quite know what's in there, so it's a good thing to test. You can do this at home, just as long as you're careful when you open your agar lid not to take the lid off. Just poke the syringe through the side and just squirt a little bit in there and make sure it keeps covered, and it should be fine. You will need a liquid culture syringe. Make sure you choose a good vendor to get your syringes from. We agar test all of our syringes. We're going to agar test this one today just to show you the practice so you can do this at home. So you can agar test your syringes when you make them to know that your syringe you used was clean. Isopropyl. Make sure you isopropyl anything that's come in the mail, what you're using. And also good to isopropyl your bench. Make sure you let everything dry before you light any lighters, otherwise you do. Have our syringe. Make sure you give it a good shake. It's important with syringes, depending where you buy them from, it's probably good to give it a spray with isopropyl before you use it. Ours are all packed in a lab, but if you're using someone else's, it's probably just packed on a bench. Let it dry. You've probably seen at the doctors how they work. They make sure nothing touches anything. Make sure it's nice and tight. There we go. So make sure you let all the isopropyl dry before you do anything. Don't touch anything. If you do, then you have to re-isopropyl your hands. So these should be all sterile underneath from when we cooked them. Generally I'll go through and loosen them all. It's just easier doing it all at once, so you won't have to stop and start. So generally you want to work quickly, just to minimise anything that might land on your work. One thing to remember, your foil underneath should be sterile, so it's been placed down the whole time, so whenever you take it off, make sure you leave it still bottom facing down. Now ready to inoculate them, so we want to flame sterilise our needle. You want to do this between each jar, so each time you do a jar, put the foil back resting on it and then flame sterilise needle again. You want to make sure you get it red hot. Give it a bit more of a shake. So leave the foil facing up. Make sure you can see down the side. We want about 1/4 ml per hole. You'll see it squish out on the side. Go to the next hole. You see on the side. Ooh, there's a bit much on that one. As soon as you're finished, just rest the foil back over it. The next one. And you want to flame sterilize again. A bit of a shake. Remembering 1/4 ml per hole. It's like the game operation, trying to touch your needle onto anything, apart from being in the jar. Sometimes you might get a bit of vermicular stuck in it, so it might jam up. Just be careful not to overdo it. Just lock them at that time. Cover it with foil again. Big shake up. And then we're going to quickly do our agar plate. Again, flame sterilised needle. And that's it. Just squirt a tiny bit in there. With agar plates, it's very important to not take the lid off at all. So just tuck it under the side. You still might get some contamination flying under the side from your hands and things like that. So it's a matter of just watching where the liquid is, and obviously the mushroom mycelium that starts, if there's any problems starting from the liquid rather than what might have landed on there when you opened it. Where you put on all the foils. This one's a bit cactus. As long as it's covering it, it's fine. So I buggered the foil on this one, so I just got another bit, sprayed it with isopropyl. Problem solved. And then what I'm doing is pushing it up the sides so we can see it all growing. And now we're going to label them. It's important to put the date on there so you remember when you started them. Hey Siri, what's the date? What is the date? Still on it, Jesus Christ. Siri hasn't had a coffee this morning, so I'll do W/O for white oyster. So we'll just label all of our jars. I've done WO for white oyster and the date. Also on the agar plate, try to tip it over because it is liquid, so you don't want the liquid spilling out over the sides. We should see from where the liquid is, the white mycelium starting. If some contamination's landed in there when I opened it, you may see that around the edges where it's just got to come under the side. But generally where your liquid's gone, you should see just your mycelium growing. Send us a photo if you're unsure, and we're happy to help ID stuff if you need. Even if it's not ours, send it over, happy to help you out. You may get some contamination get in from when you open the bag in an unsterile environment, so it's just a matter of keeping an eye out where it's actually started, whether it's flown in from the side or whether it's actually from your liquid. Generally, if you've got a contamination problem from your liquid, it should just throw over really quickly. Whereas if it's flying in from the sides, there should just be little dots starting where they've landed in there. And that's it. Nice and simple. You can do this at home without a flow hood, and just all you need is a pressure canner. It's one of the easiest methods to grow mushrooms with in a small amount. And if you have any problems, you just tip out the jar and wash it out and start again. That's simple. Let's have a look at some footage of them growing over and us fruiting them. Catch you next time.
The PFTEK is one of the best ways to learn to grow mushrooms. You learn every step of the process from start to finish, and it's super fun and a great way to learn. Make sure you follow each step of our instructions and you should be fine. As you can see, the cakes in the jars fruited a little bit better. This is because they didn't lose as much moisture being in the jar and fruiting at the top. We were a bit slack with this, we didn't mist all week and the lid was mostly off. So we had bigger mushrooms from just the jars, just leaving them to their thing. If you don't fruit in the jars, make sure you keep up your misting, just as the bare cakes do lose moisture quicker. It's a great way to learn how to grow mushrooms. You do get fairly small amounts of mushrooms. Obviously, more substrate equals more mushrooms. It's just mainly to learn the process, and then you can scale up to bigger amounts of material, which means you'll get much more mushrooms. The main reason to do this kind of method is when you have problems, which happens to everybody, you're only throwing out a tiny bit of substrate until you get your technique finely tuned. This method works with many different types of mushrooms. Some types, like shiitake, you need to swap the vermiculite in your substrate mix with sawdust. We do have a PFTEK printable version of this guide. Jump on our website and download it and have a read if you are the type of person that likes to read. And that's it. Give it a go. It's fun. See you next time.